Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin, and I have a great guest. It's my honor, Governor Sarah Palin. How are you?
Thank you. It's my honor. Thanks.
Flew down from Alaska. I mean, I couldn't be more appreciative for that.
Thank you.
You know, we know a little bit about your background. We know a lot about your background. You grew up in Alaska most of your life.
All my life.
All your life.
Yeah.
In Wasilla. You settled there. Mm-hmm. Your parents did. You became a member of the city council. Mm-hmm. You became mayor. You knocked off the incumbent mayor. I seem to recall you ran for lieutenant governor. Then you ran for governor and you won. Mm-hmm. Give me a little history on how you decided to run for governor and how you won. That's a big darn state for an outsider to win in. Mm-hmm. You're like one of the first outsider candidates.
Even when I was on city council, I realized in order to really get the job done for the people, you needed to be the top dog in the organization. So we have a strong mayor form of government, which is the city manager job, really. Ran for mayor knowing that that's how I could really administratively put our local government back on the side of the people. So ran for mayor and then was term limited out there, and then served as an oil and gas commissioner, and then ran for lieutenant governor, lost, and knew even during that loss that our state was missing out on the people's will really being done. So ran for governor, certainly as an outsider. I had challenged an incumbent Republican, Governor Frank Murkowski. He was a 22-year U.S. senator.
His daughter's now senator.
Yes, he gave his seat to his daughter. Yes.
Passed it along.
That's another story. Yeah. Though, I was considered even back then going rogue because I challenged the Republican Party, but we had a lot of corruption going on in our state, and people wanted it cleaned up, but nobody else was going to clean it up, and I said I could.
How did you learn that Senator McCain was choosing you as his running mate?
Well, I didn't know I was being vetted, and one day I was at the Alaska State Fair awarding the Farm Family of the Year and left the podium and put my baby, I just had a baby, he was 16 weeks old, put him in my Snuggly, was walking out of the fairgrounds, got a call, Senator McCain, asking if I wanted to run for vice president. And I said, well, I'm governor and things are going very well. As governor, we were just kicking butt on producing oil and gas and just a lot going on with our agenda. And my oldest son had enlisted. He was ready to go off to war. My oldest daughter, still a teenager, informed us that she was pregnant. My husband was working up on the North Slope in the oil fields. It was a 1,700-mile commute from the governor's mansion for his work. So we had a lot going on. And when Senator McCain asked if I wanted to run for vice president, I said, got nothing else going on? Sure, happy to run.
Why do you think he chose you?
Probably for political practical reasons. He probably knew that they needed someone younger, needed a female, and needed a true conservative to balance everything else out. And they were smart enough to have chosen someone with a lot of administrative experience. That was my career, was administration.
Are you glad looking back that you were chosen and ran for vice president?
Oh yeah, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I'd have pushed back harder on some of those who were trying to mold me into something that I was not during the campaign. I would have pushed back and gotten more truth out there, but heck yeah. When
I think about you and your family, you're very transparent. You say what you think, they say what they think, and yet the abuses that you, your husband, and your children have had to face. I mean, families have to deal with things that happen. Everything's not primrose. Were you surprised at how vicious the media were?
I was surprised because they're in Alaska. As I mentioned, my ratings were very high. Things were going well in the court of public opinion even. So I was mostly shocked, Mark, though, that the campaign itself didn't defend against a lot of the lies that were being spewed during the campaign. And then when that narrative was created, they created a caricature of Sarah Palin and the Palin family. Once that bell is rung, it's hard to unring. So that aspect was perplexing and frustrating. But, you know, I've learned a lot in these 10 years, and I don't put up with as much as I had back then. And I don't let things bother me. I obviously didn't let a lot of things bother me then either. Otherwise, I'd be curled up in a fetal position under that table and just want to go away.
And you became, in many ways, the leader of this movement, this Tea Party movement, which still serves as the base of the Republican Party today. The Tea Party movement, I think, was a progeny of the Reagan Revolution. Mm-hmm. I also think it's part of a big base of the current president, Donald Trump. How do you feel about that?
That Tea Party movement, the movement was always there. There just wasn't maybe a person or a more specific agenda to coalesce around and then turn that movement into results in the ballot box. That movement was there, and certainly under Reagan. I'm privileged to have come into my own, politically speaking, during the Reagan years. That's when I was in college, studied political science under Reagan, so I knew how to do things right. It's always been there. Just the voice of the people had been ignored for so long. Both parties, I call it a uni-party, both parties had ignored the common man for so long and just taken us for granted that, no, the time was right to get out there and not lead it, but just speak for a lot of the issues and a lot of the heart that so many Americans were feeling.
And given your background, given your role with the Tea Party, your strong principled conservative beliefs, what do you make of what's happening in Congress with the Republican Party today? What do you make of this incredibly profligate budget and spending that they've been involved in?
Yeah, really frustrated with that recent Omnibus because, you know, it just became really apparent that, okay, we're only going to slam the big spending, bloated budgets, I guess, when the Democrats held the purse strings. We won't hold our own party accountable when we're part of the problem with this, you know, unchallenged debt that we're incurring that's growing and the deficits that now I guess are okay, and specific things in the omnibus that now are being funded, like Planned Parenthood, that we were screaming about, you know, when Obama was in charge. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, those things are not even debated in a lot of respects now. So that's really frustrating. There are some really good conservatives in Congress, thank goodness. A lot of the participants in the Freedom Caucus, I have great respect for. I was frustrated when President Trump and President Trump's people had declared war on the Freedom Caucus. I think they did that by mistake, and they haven't, you know, followed up on that much, because there are some good people who understand fiscal responsibility and how important it is to get our arms around this debt. But they're, at this point, outnumbered. The good guys need reinforcements in Congress.
What do you think about the way it was done? You've had basically McConnell and Ryan and Pelosi and Schumer in a closed room. These called smoke-filled, but they're in the room, and it's not smoke-filled these days, but they're still there. They hammer out this massive 2,200-plus page document. In the Senate, they're not allowed to offer any amendments. In the House, they're not allowed to offer any amendments. They vote on it literally within hours. Is that the way our democracy is supposed to work?
No, and that's why people are fed up with politicians. They're fed up with government. Yeah, 2,232 pages, 48 hours to vote on a $1.3 trillion spending package that in 6 months they're going to turn around and do the same thing again. It's not like that $1.3 trillion was going to get us through, any number of months. So, no, the whole process was so skewed. And if they think that people are going to just let that go and that we're just going to swallow that and say, well, that's just the way it is. Well, we're not. That practice that we just saw, we just witnessed how they do things in those proverbial smoke-filled rooms. That's why people are so up in arms when it comes to the direction of our government, and that's why Trump was elected. President Trump is there.
Should he have vetoed it?
He should have. I believe he should have. Of course, I don't know all the details, obviously.
Do you think the Republicans are going to pay a price for it in the midterm election?
They better start articulating answers to the people who will have questions that we're asking right now. I said, why the heck did you guys do that? You didn't have to do that. And for us to have conceded, oh, we had to give up a lot in order to get this or that. No, that's not, we didn't get a good deal out of that. If we had to, vote on something, 48, nobody read the thing.
No, which is a great point. They're voting on something they never read. You point out they not only fully fund Planned Parenthood, they get more money than before. And yet, look at the border. They don't fund, really, effectively, new walls, new security. And this is coming out of the Republicans. I mean, I'm flabbergasted by this. They used to say, a lot of these folks I knew, I'm not a social conservative, I'm not a neocon, but I am a fiscal conservative.
Everybody.
They can't even say that anymore, can they?
Right. No, and you're right. When it came to funding more border patrol, more walls, more fences, no, they didn't fund that for inside the U.S., but we did fund that in some foreign countries. And I think what Republicans are going to have to answer to come campaign time, election time again, is where do they think we're going to get the money to pay for all of this? We're broke, and people don't talk about that. That we're $20 trillion in debt, and with unfunded liabilities coming up in our kids' and our grandkids' future, it's more like $120 trillion. Where does Congress think that we'll get the money to pay for all these things? What are we going to do? Borrow money from more foreign countries in order to turn around and give it to other foreign countries? Or will we just print the money out of thin air? With quantitative easing, we all just had to put up with that too, with money being printed. And I don't know, they better watch it, or we're going to turn into Germany 1923 with wheelbarrows full of devalued dollars.
Why do you think they did this?
I think that,
scared?
I think again that they think that we're not paying attention to the degree that we are, that if they can just placate us by saying, now, that's the way that we have to do it, otherwise, all of government's just going to have to shut down, and kind of put the fear of God in us. I think they just take it for granted that we're going to sit there and swallow it and say, okay, you guys know best. But no, there are enough people paying attention. And again, that was all made manifest in the last presidential election. But no, there are enough people paying attention. And again, that was all made manifest in the last presidential election.
When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, every weeknight you can watch Levin TV on crtv.com, conservativereviewtv.com. Give us a call, 844-LEVIN-TV, and join us. That's 844-LEVIN-TV. Welcome back. I'm here with Governor Sarah Palin. I want to talk briefly about Obamacare. They never did repeal it.
Right.
Repealed a tiny little piece of it, but I still have to live with it. You probably still have to live with it. You were very, very concerned about this law. Why do you think they didn't repeal it?
Yeah, that was even part of the Omnibus. That
they funded it, right?
Right. That there were still too many aspects of it that they funded. It's a shame that they did, because that is one of the reasons that President Trump had been elected. So if for no other reason, Republicans especially should have remembered that just some months prior, people were screaming about Obamacare being so burdensome on the people, so unconstitutional, and yet they didn't even challenge it this go around, and that's sad, because Obamacare it's an atrocity, and not only is it, as I say, unconstitutional, but hijacking 20% of our economy, putting that back in government's hands was a huge mistake. And then, of course, just healthcare overall, how it would be diminished, kind of our system atrophy under Obamacare. And yet, we're still looking at it.
The president really has tried to secure the southern border. He talks about it all the time. He has demanded funding for it. He's now looking at a way to use military funds, if he can find a legitimate way to do that. He is calling on the military, the National Guard, which Obama did and George W. Bush did, in some respects to assist the Border Patrol because of this caravan that's coming or has been coming to the southern border, which is, by the way, constitutional as long as the military, this has been well understood legally and constitutionally, is not involved in specific apprehensions, arrests, detentions, and so forth. So they back up the Border Patrol. So I think he's tried to do everything a president can do. And yet Congress, again, stands in the way. Congress passes a law in 2006 that says we're going to secure the border. They don't fund it. We have Republicans in Congress, including one of your friends in Alaska, who refuse to stand behind not just the president, but the American people. This is a sovereign nation. Why do you think it's not just Democrats, but so many Republicans don't believe in securing our border?
Right, and it's obvious why the Democrats don't believe in securing the border. You know, I think that they just fear that Americans aren't going to vote Democrat, so by golly, they'll import people who will. And those who are part of that uni-party, the globalization of America agenda, they want cheap labor. It comes back to either supporting the rule of law, our legal immigration system, or supporting and incentivizing illegal immigration with no expectation of assimilation of the people into our culture or anything else. It's really whack. People are really sick of it. It's another reason that we saw a change in party power the last election cycle, and yet the voice of the people, it's being ignored. Those who want those who are looking out for the big corporations who are pro-open borders because they do want that cheap, unskilled, really, labor competing for our jobs. Those who are supporting that, I think they're going to feel it come their re-election time.
And yet, we conservatives, we vote, and we vote, and we vote. And we threw out Pelosi as the speaker in 2010, as you were involved in it, as you're well aware. 2014, we give the Republicans the Senate. 2016, the presidency. Governorships all over the country, state legislatures all over the country. And yet we continue on this progressive trajectory.
Right.
Progressive ideologically, this trajectory. Do you think the progressives have won? Do you think the Republican Party, which really was the home to progressives early on, early in the last century, do you think the progressives have won? I mean, the Democrat Party is hard left, but the Republican Party is no great shakes either.
Right. No, they haven't won. Otherwise, Hillary Clinton would have won the presidential election. They haven't won, but as I repeat myself, but as we see made manifest, the uni-party still has not heard the voice of the people who are saying the status quo has got to go. Look where the status quo has gotten us with these bloated budgets, unsustained debt and deficits, with open borders, essentially, with the rule of law being ignored, with the judicial system, activist judges ignoring the balance of power, all those things that have put us on that trajectory. Those things that are going wrong, those in Congress who still haven't heard that and accepted that what we said during the presidential election was the status quo has got to go, I think a lot of them are choosing to retire. You know, they're realizing, oh, maybe I'm not going to have it so easy. I think you're going to see a lot of primaried Republican candidates, and it's to send that message.
I want to jump into foreign policy a second. One of the things I know you're concerned about is Russia and China land grabbing and resource grabbing and grabbing minerals under the sea, really with no challenge. Russia's militarizing the Arctic with the help of the Chinese, claiming natural gas and oil and so forth. Are we doing enough about this? Is this even becoming a big enough issue?
I hope it becomes a big enough issue, because what Russia is doing right now is they're flagging undersea resources, oil and gas, and things that can be responsibly exploited for mankind's use. Russia is claiming these areas, and yet these areas don't belong to Russia, and we're not doing anything about it. And we really need to get on board with that agenda to start protecting our resources and areas that are being disputed. And of course, I know all that about Russia because I keep my eye on Russia, of course.
From Alaska, right?
But and China, we not keeping up with China is doing with their aggression, and of course the international community is telling China, you can't do that, and these South China Seas areas, that's not your territory, you have to stay out. But nothing's ever enforced, so these countries keep on keeping on, and in the meantime, America can be seen as kind of dithering and stepping back, allowing them and their aggression to start claiming more. Our sovereignty and our solvency is at stake here. So Congress, they got to be schooled up on this stuff, and they have to start, via the laws that they can make, start directing administration to start really exerting U.S. power to claim a lot of resources that we're letting go today.
And the president has sent a fleet to the South China Sea. It seems to me the president's trying to do these things and undo what Obama
Exactly.
did. Basically surrender all these areas of the world, these navigable waters, these trade lanes and so forth, that he's trying to reverse course, no?
Right. He definitely is. And that he was adamant about doing things different in the campaign, and that's why he's won. He was an outsider. And despite the huge threats against him, he is winning in a lot of respects. And there is, huge threat against, it's a triple threat against this president. He's got the obstructionists, the Democrats, obstructionists in his own party, which is a shame because he's got some vipers on his own staff who maybe he doesn't realize it, but they're not serving him well, some of them. And of course, he has an obstinate press. So that triple threat against him, despite all that, he's still succeeding in a lot of areas.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Governor Palin, I want to follow up on some of this with China. As you point out, China now has built these fake islands in the South China Sea, and they've militarized it.
Right.
They're threatening Japan, certain islands. They're threatening the Philippines. The Vietnamese government's even asked us for help, so we docked one of our warships in their ports. Nobody would have ever thought that would happen. China's stealing our technology left and right. They're forcing companies that do business in China to turn over our technology. The president seems to want to confront this and address this. But again, the media, Congress, not so much. Mm-hmm.
Well, out of those entities that you mentioned, maybe the president is the only one who's aware that China is not even shy about their intentions, which is ultimately it's world dominance. And China's even named their plan, and it's the one road, one belt, how they believe that they're going to control not just all the parts and pieces of things that the rest of the world needs to function, including materials for our own infrastructure, but also now China's saying, we're also going to control the way that the things that they manufacture are transported, and that's waterways, and that's via landmass that ultimately covers 2/3 of the world's population. Maybe the president is the only one understanding what China's ultimate goal is, even though China's telling us pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm. And he seems to be doing things prior presidents wouldn't do, and I mean in a very positive way. In other words, he's confronting China. He's confronting Russia, North Korea, the outrageous Iran deal.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. I think he's going to kill it, and I think he should. Why do you think the Obama administration was at best passive and at worst contributory to this kind of really outrageous foreign policy?
Right. Well, the Obama administration was full of those people who believe in globalization that America is just like every other country. You know, we don't have anything special. We're not exceptional. Our Constitution wasn't inspired by those things that time-tested truths prove will work. No, we're just like everybody else. So they had to kind of diminish America's standings. I think that's the bottom line about that administration. But yeah, in the past, too many people have been beholden to special interests that actually profit from an agenda like the Obama administration was having us on. But yeah, as for the particulars there with North Korea and with that Iran deal, isn't it ironic that here under Bill Clinton, it was nukes for North Korea, and under Obama, you know, nukes in Iran. Under Hillary, it was our uranium being sold to the Russians, and yet they are all claiming that it's President Trump who wants to have a nuclear war. No, if anything, it was past agendas that were based on special interests that have gotten us into the pickle that we're in, and that is kind of some diminished power of America that President Trump is trying to grow again for the right reasons.
Do you like his recent appointments of Pompeo for State and Bolton as National Security Advisor?
I don't know either one personally, but reading a lot of Bolton's past work and what he is really a proponent of, I am thankful that he's all about, you know, U.S. sovereignty and power. I'm not the war hawk that maybe some people would think that, you know, hardcore Republican would be. And that's because I see what war does to an individual, to a family. War is hell, and I don't want America to go to war. And I believe in the old Reaganism that we can show strength and then have peace. Mm-hmm. And of course, some criticism about Bolton is he is such a hawk, but I believe that he is wise enough to know that no, we'll exert our power only when necessary, and military power is the very last option.
Well, the Russians seem to be very nervous about him. So do the Chinese and the Iranians.
So that's a good sign.
I was going to say, that's pretty good, right?
Right. And, you know, it is Trump's team. Mm-hmm. He's the leader of the team, and he has every right and responsibility to have his team members around him.
Mm-hmm. Which is the point. He'll make the final decision.
Right.
And people will give it back. You know, I've known John Bolton for 30 years. And you know, he was our UN ambassador for a period of time. The Democrats blocked him from getting a permanent position. And he worked in the Reagan administration at the Department of Justice under Ed Meese. He worked in the Bush administration at the State Department and so forth. And all these attacks on him, I never remember him being a hothead. I never remember him wanting to go to war. You talk about make America great again and America first. Mm-hmm. In terms of foreign policy, that's John Bolton.
My response to you about, well, I hope he's not a war hawk, that's an example then of even someone very informed, someone obsessed with current events and history and politics, not knowing quite how to judge someone because too much of my judgment comes from what I see on TV and hear on the radio from others who want me and others to believe that he's not the right person. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's a lesson too for all of us, for me, for everybody, to do our homework, mm-hmm. to really dive into these issues and these people and what they stand for before we do make judgments.
Don't forget, folks, Levin TV every weeknight on crtv.com. Give us a call and sign up. 844-LEVIN-TV, 844-LEVIN-TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm with Governor Palin. Governor Palin, this horrific killing in Florida. See another one at the YouTube headquarters. There have been killings before. And it almost immediately triggers or spurs this anti-Bill of Rights, anti-Second Amendment movement. And this time it really has kicked into gear where even critics are being attacked and so forth and so on, and the media seems to be behind this. I know you're a proponent of gun rights, as am I. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this?
Well, it's always to be expected after such a tragedy. Unfortunately, it becomes politicized right off the bat, and the left goes after the good guys who want to protect our Second Amendment and want to protect themselves via that tool, a firearm. The left just kind of lumps us all in together as being, I guess, a surrogate of, or that shooter being a surrogate of us, of our thinking that our Bill of Rights and our Constitution is, our perfect blueprint. And that's quite unfortunate. It's to be expected, though. And that is why those who do say they're proponents of the Second Amendment can't cave. They need to expect what's coming, the rhetoric, the attacks, the criticism, and, just deal with it, but stand strong on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
And yet I find it interesting and troublesome that when you talk about having people in the schools that can defend the children, who obviously can't defend themselves, whether they're ex-military, police officers, ex-police officers, trained personnel like teachers like they have in Israel and so forth, you're said to be introducing too many guns into the school system. Don't we have people who protect us at airports? Don't we have marshals on our planes? When you go to a sporting event, don't we have people who are trained and armed to protect us? Why do they take that position, do you think?
Yeah, talk about hypocritical and double standards. Mm-hmm. We have every right. We have God-given right that's codified in our Bill of Rights to protect ourselves and to protect our property and our families. And it's not just a select few that government will choose who gets to be protected. The movie stars, the politicians in D.C., those in a courthouse. No, the Bill of Rights does apply to every single citizen of the U.S.
And we have retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens, who wrote the minority opinion in the Heller decision, in which the court held that you do have a right to protect yourself with a weapon. And that was a 5-4 decision. And you see our fundamental rights really do hang in the balance with one vote here or one vote there. It's a fundamental right if we have 5 votes, and it's not a fundamental right if they have 5 votes, which seems absurd on its face. But it shows you how close we came to the undoing of the Second Amendment by the courts. Do you think the courts are too powerful?
I think that the courts today ignore their role as a third branch. I think that too many judicial activists try to take over other branches of government. And it's our responsibility, though, to not allow them to do that. And we do that by voting for representatives who will make sure that we have an administration that doesn't appoint judicial activists. And things certainly have gotten out of control there. It tells us, as you say, how important our vote is. And, the midterms coming up here in 7 months, what the monumental vote will result in is our House of Representatives, 1/3 of the Senate, 36 governor seats across the nation, plus all the attorney general seats and legislative and local government seats. The vote is monumental because ultimately our representatives whom we do vote for are the ones who can appoint the people or, block the people from these judicial appointments that make such important decisions. So coming up, the vote being so important, and people need to know that, it's on their shoulders. They got to be the ones out there making their voice heard.
All right. We'll be right back. Governor Palin, we have a special counsel running around. We have congressional committees. We had the perversion of the FISA court. We've got this dossier that was funded by the Democrats with Russian input and so forth and so on. And if the Democrats take the House, everybody is concluding that they might try and impeach the President of the United States. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Oh, I think this is unprecedented, all those elements of a perfect storm against the will of the people, having elected a president to get rid of the status quo and make America great again. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of abuse going on. There's so much corruption going on, and I think a lot of that will come to the surface, hopefully soon, because these investigations to nowhere and all these resources being spent on things that thus far are proving to be futile and proving to be just attacks at individuals. So much of this is such a waste of time and such a huge distraction, which is a lot of their goal, is to distract the people from the issues that really matter.
You know, when it came to Hillary Clinton and the Espionage Act and the violations of classified documents and so forth, these same elements within the FBI and the Justice Department did everything they could to brush it under the rug. I mean, this is quite serious when we have a government that functions like this.
Very scary, and very scary to see what perhaps has happened with the FISA court, with an unwarranted spying on American citizens that was allowed, under some FISA rulings, and to consider that we have these weaponized agencies against the people. We saw what happened with the IRS and DOJ and FBI, and it's this alphabet swamp there in D.C. that the president is trying to drain and clean up. So it's been good, not only Trump's candidacy, but his presidency, to be able to rip the veil off this system, power and wealth, corrupt system. People now can see what is going on, which is good, because now we can do something about it.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess one of the things you would say is you better hold on to that House of Representatives, Republicans, and you people, even though you're upset with them, this is a different ballgame. You're talking about preserving the president as president.
Right. People need to realize that the next vote, we're talking about blocking, whether we block nominees or not. We're talking about subpoena power. We're talking about all these ramifications of the House of Representatives vote that's coming up. Yeah, so people need to be paying attention, doing their homework, and becoming educated and activists.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, Governor, the Iditarod and the Iron Dog, I don't even know what I'm talking about. These are things you do in Alaska. These are things your husband do. Tell me about this.
Yeah, they're hardcore endurance athletic events. One involves dogs, dog mushing, 1,000 miles across Alaska, and another involves snow machines, 2,000 miles across Alaska. It's kind of an example of the hardcore, tough things that toughen you up as an Alaskan and let you know that if you can accomplish things like those endurance events, you can put up with anything.
Now, Todd hurt himself, actually, in one of these events, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. They crash a lot, and Todd had one major crash, but no, he's still out racing. He's still out doing his thing. In fact, that's why he's not here today, because the snow is still really good in Alaska. Good in terms of it's deep, and you can still do a lot of things in the snow.
And something took place in a recent bill that I know you were fighting for, and that is more drilling.
Yes.
Right? Tell us about that.
Well, ANWR is open, so Alaskans are grateful. America should be grateful. We're the Fort Knox of a lot of natural resources up there that need to be responsibly exploited, so we're more and more independent. When we talk about natural resources and God's creation that can be responsibly used for mankind, America's got it all. We don't have to rely on any other nation. We're talking economic security and national security, militarily even. The more independent we are, the safer we are, and the more prosperous we are. There's an inherent link between oil and security and natural gas and economic prosperity. That inherent link, I think that this administration, thank God this new administration gets it, and they're going to do all that they can to make sure we're responsibly using natural resources.
And many people who don't live in Alaska may not know that when we're talking about ANWR, we're talking about a speck. really, and Alaska's so big, we're talking about a speck.
Right.
And so the people who don't want drilling there really are the radical extremists. Listen, I want to thank you so much for coming. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks.
You can join us next week right here, Life, Liberty, and Levin next time. Thanks for joining us.